Shalom and good day all, this is Tehillim29 back again for another comic review for Rainbow Press and Comics. And as you can see here, this Marvel review, which it is on the Elektra, Black, White and Blood. And this actually has 3 stories in it, so it's a bit of an anthology. I'm not too sure how many comics will be out for this series, and it's also be nice to see if it was actually noted on the cover itself as to how many comics will be for this. And just as DC Comics did their Batman Black and White, well, Marvel Comics has decided to do the same thing, where there's covered Batman, Superman, which was the red and blue, and also the Wonder Woman, which was the black and gold, I think it was. So it's time to get into reviewing this comic. I have decided to add it to my list, so you might end up seeing more reviews of this on the channel. We'll see what happens. It depends if there's any good stories in it, or there might be some stories that ain't so flash. I'm surprised with this, I must admit. Going with this particular cover, I did decide to give it a 7 out of 10, and I did feel it actually worked for what was actually covered in the stories. So, for the cover, rating out of 10 is a 7 out of 10. It's now time to move into the internals, which I'll show you some of the art connected to all 3 of the stories. But then I'll give the rating for the stories. Now this is just to show you some of the stories that are actually in this, before I move into showing the art. So jumping into the beginning, as this is some of the art around the first story. Some of the art around the second story. And some of the art around the last story. Now, in relation to the stories, the first one, Red Dawn, connected to her fighting up against like a type of demon, as well as her connection to the hand. The second one, it felt like it was connected to like some form of assassination attempt. And the last story, very different in its own right, but I certainly felt the art was really good for it. But in relation to the story rating, I'll get to that later, but it felt like, well, I'll get to that now, not later. It felt like it was really covering the full-on assassin side of Elektra. So for the first story rating, which is called Red Dawn, I gave it a 7 out of 10, as I enjoyed the little story that we were given. But for the art, I did feel it slipped a little bit, to which I gave it a 6.5 out of 10. For the second story, it was an okay story. It felt a little bit hard to follow in some places, to which I both gave the story and the art a 6.5 out of 10. There were some interesting panels there, but would I recommend that particular story? Maybe not. Moving into story 3, it felt like it was, again, all over the place, but you know what? I really enjoyed the art. For the story rating, it got a 6.5 out of 10. But for the art rating, it got a 7 out of 10. So it's definitely an interesting little anthology in its own right, just with these 3 stories. It'll be interesting once again to see how the next issue compares to the first. and if any of these stories will actually go a little bit higher than 7 out of 10 at least. Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day. And by the way, it's really nice to start to see Elektra being brought back. But by the way, she's an assassin. She's not effing Daredevil.